The Dental Download Podcast is your source for insight into dental school, conversations with dentists, specialists, and leaders in the industry. With new episodes every Monday morning, I'm your host, Haley Schultz. Let's get into this week's episode. Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily and then distribute it everywhere and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters. Here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right away from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify, but also everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available, and you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. Did I mention it is totally free, no catch? I've been using Spotify for Podcasters since the very beginning of my show, and now we're nearing our 200th episode, so I can definitely say it's an easy platform, and I've really loved using it. So be sure to download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. Hello, everyone. We have another guest here today, and I'm going to let Dr. Bree introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Dr. Bree Torgerson, but I go by Dr. Bree. And yeah, I'm so happy to be on the podcast. Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, I was connected with you on Instagram, and I thought you'd be a fun guest to have. Can you give people some background on where you went to dental school, where you're practicing now, anything else fun about yourself?
Yeah. Okay. So I went to dental school at the University of Southern California, in LA. I've been out for a few years. So I first started working, I graduated 2020. And I actually had a temporary license and then eventually a permanent license in Arizona, because they were offering the temporary licensure at the time. And I had just recently moved to Florida, where my parents live. So I've been here since, I've been working since November here. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Huh.
So did you move from Florida to California back to Florida, or did you do undergrad out of state as well?
So I call myself an American mutt because I feel like I've lived everywhere. I was born and raised in Minnesota. When I was 13, we moved to St. Louis, Missouri. I went to high school in Massachusetts, went back to Minnesota for undergrad. I feel like I didn't have a typical, so no one in my family is a dentist. So I wanted to be a dentist originally because I thought my orthodontist was really cute when I was 13. So I was like, ooh, maybe I'll shadow him. And then he let me look at the before and after photos of people who got braces. And I just could feel this, you could feel how genuinely happy they were through even just the photos on a computer. And I just immediately was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I want to, whatever this is, I'm into it. So I want to do this. So when I was 13, I decided I want to be a dentist. So I didn't know anything of what that entailed. We didn't know anyone who was a dentist. So we didn't know anything. My parents didn't know anything. So when I graduated, I there wasn't really a pre-dental at my school. So no one was telling me to take the DAT. No, I had no idea that there was the DAT books that you could study from. So I took a few years off to kind of get my footing. And during that time, I was so sick of living in gray, right? Minnesota, Massachusetts, Missouri. So I just Googled the sunniest place in the world, and it was Phoenix, Arizona. So I was like, all right, that's where I'm going. So I picked up, moved, didn't have a job. I knew one person who needed a roommate. And my second day out there, I got a job working at the front office of a dental practice. So And it's like, where the rest is kind of history. I, ended up taking the DAT 3 times. I typically applied to dental school 3 times, but USC called me 10 days before school started, and said, "Hey, like, do you want to come here?" And I was like, "Yes, obviously." So I had 10 days to move from like Scottsdale, Arizona to LA, which was crazy, but obviously very worth it. So, and then while I was in school, my parents moved to Florida. So that's kind of how I ended up like in Arizona and Florida after school. Yeah. Short story long. that's, that's
Yeah.
what happened.
Yeah. Quite the timeline there. And I appreciate people that can share experiences of not just like undergrad right to dental school, because that's really not as common as people make it seem like it is, or like has
Yeah.
to be that way, because it definitely doesn't.
No, it definitely doesn't. And some of my like greatest friends that I met through like in dental school, um, they had like other careers first, and then they, went into dental school. So, and it took them a long time, like a lot of people in my class had to take like master's programs. And again, which like something I never even knew, I'm like, oh my gosh, if that was the case, I would have been so lost. But, um, I think like non-traditional students is almost becoming like more traditional. I think it's pretty rare nowadays to like have people like coming straight out of undergrad. Not impossible, obviously, but it's just becoming so competitive, which is great for for the career. But yeah, definitely don't be discouraged. Definitely don't be discouraged at all.
Are there any like lessons that come to mind from those gap years and applying a few times that you would share with anyone in your position?
Yeah. So I was an ambassador at USC, so I feel like I got a lot of questions like this. And obviously like words of wisdom is like, like don't give up. Like if you don't get in the first year or whatever, I called places and I said, what would you like to see have like improved on my application? Like what are some things that you thought were like the weakest part of my application? Um, and I mean some places were very vague, but some were very honest. Some places were honest and saying like we just don't think that you'll ever get in, which I just think is crazy to say to someone, but like that's the reality. People say things like that to you. Um, some people were like, like you need to get your scores up, like you need to do something like this. So I think calling places and asking, but I also think at the time I really hated working in the front office of a dental practice because I wanted to be in back so bad. But I was a treatment coordinator and an insurance benefits coordinator. And I think learning how to like present a treatment plan to patients and like learning how to talk about money like to people like helped me in dental school. I didn't have a single cancellation or no show until my 4th year of dental school, which is like crazy. Everyone thought it was like nuts, but I can truly say I think it was like the 2 years of like working at a front office that helped. I mean, I felt like that it just was like second nature. So getting a job at an office, and honestly, like working in front, like you don't have to be a dental assistant. You don't have to, do anything in back. I'm so grateful for my experience working up front now. So that would be my advice. And then just don't get too hard on yourself. Life is hard. People are already going to be hard on you. You don't need to be a part of that group. So just keep your head up.
Very good advice. And I've heard from a lot of people in their gap years that they might have done something not even dental related at all, and it still helped them like
Yeah.
in their profession. Like they worked in an ice cream shop or something, and like that
Yes.
communication
Yeah.
skills just made them a better people person. And
Yes. I was gonna
dentistry
say like
is
customer service, like
mhm.
anywhere with customer service where you're gonna like have to deal with things that are like kind of tough or whatever. I mean, ice cream shop is good too because people are happy. How could you be sad? Get an ice cream. But
Yeah.
yeah, anywhere with customer service I think is great. So
Yeah, there's a lot of like dentistry. It's clinical, but it's such a people's field as well. Like you are really
Yeah.
interacting with the patients
Yeah.
constantly.
Which is honestly something that I was surprised about when had just graduated. I mean, I did pretty well in school. I worked very hard, to do well. It wasn't easy, but I thought, man, I have this in the bag. I thought it was, I had like my clinical skills I thought they were so great. I mean, so funny, right? I've been humbled so many times, but man, the one thing I wish I would have learned how to do, which I don't even know how I would have learned how to do this in dental school. So it's a huge reality check for people, is like working with people outside of school. I know like at USC, like we didn't have dental assistants, like we didn't have dental assistants helping us. So I worked by myself, right? Like I was the front office, I was the back office, I was the dentist, I was everything. I played, and so getting out of school and now like going from someone who is so type A and having everything planned and organized the way I like it and the way that worked out for me, to like being an associate where I have to kind of sit back and like delegate these things to other people, or like let other people do their job, was so hard. That it was the hardest thing, and still is sometimes, to like let people who are hired to do something do their job. um, so that's definitely one thing I wish, we would have been exposed to more
Mm-hmm.
in school, for
Yeah.
sure.
And that's a personal skill, like being able to delegate, but it also kind of circles back to people skills and communication and like
Mm-hmm.
teamwork, all those intangible skills that you need to develop before and while you start working.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like, I feel like, I don't know if it's like this in other schools, but you're almost like take pride in being able to do everything yourself. That like when you get out, it's such a 180 that you're like, oh, like, right. I need to scale it back a little bit. And so there's growing pains for sure. But again, like don't be too hard on yourself. Like you again spent 4 years learning how to like be like anal retentive about everything. Um, that now you get to just be like, retentive about the dentistry part of it. So it's an adjustment, but definitely not impossible.
And while we're still talking about looking back at dental school for you, is there anything that sticks out that like you wish you did while you were in dental school, or anything you're really glad you did?
Um, I was actually really happy with kind of like how my dental school went, like my dental school experience went. I feel like I was involved in just enough things. Like I was as involved as I wanted to be. I did our like USC has like a mobile dental clinic, um, almost like selective, that I was chosen to be a part of, which was such a blessing. We got to go and help like the underserved communities throughout Southern California, which was great. I did international work with the school. And then I also, I personally, again, like I wasn't chosen for everything, I wasn't chosen to go be a part of like our dental humanitarian outreach program. But I kind of was like, well, this is what I want to do. So I actually reached out to like a separate, just like international volunteer program. And I went to Peru by myself to do some dental care, which was awesome. I mean, again, I just like people can't get too bogged down about like, oh, I didn't get chosen for this. It's like, okay, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. But I mean, I got to place implants, I got to do, an overdenture. And so I felt like I was able to do a lot of things in dental school as far as like clinical, clinical things. But I don't know. Yeah, there's not much I would change. I don't think. I mean, I would change how I graduated because I didn't get to graduate.
Yeah.
But that's pretty much it.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
I
good.
was really
And
blessed.
yeah, and I think it seems like people that don't jump right into dental school from undergrad tend to just have those more balanced and like excellent experiences like you did, because you have more perspective on what's important to you and more vision for what you want for your career. So I'm sure that
Yeah.
those years helped you then make the most in dental school when you got there.
Yeah. And I felt like knowing how like a real dental office is actually ran, like real work and like real life and dental school, you would think would be very similar, but they're not. I mean, they're just not. So I think knowing like how a practice was kind of like ran and like how to do things, again, both front and back, was just very beneficial. So yeah, I was very happy with how my experience was as far as like the clinical part of school.
And
It was great.
do you think a lot of that is you making the most of opportunities, finding opportunities, or was a lot of that just how USC's program is run?
I can't say because I don't know how other schools are ran, but I think it's a little bit of both. And I think this is just like life in general, right? It's like you have, I mean, the reality is like we live in America, we have so many opportunities for anything. I mean, like really, we are all so like very lucky to be here. And I think that, I don't know, I took every opportunity that I guess I wanted to, right? Like, or at least I got to go after it, right? And it's like if something didn't necessarily go my way, I mean, you just find other ways to do it, right? It's you have to like adjust and adapt. So I think part of it was USC offered a lot of, like a plethora of different like selectives and groups and programs. But I think a lot of it was also is like I I think because it took me so long and it took me so much to get into school that once I was in, I'm like, I'm not gonna waste this experience. And I really just kind of like went after it. So
That's great.
yeah.
Some of the things you mentioned, I was just thinking, I was like, man, we have no opportunities to actually place implants during dental school. So I thought that was cool. Is that
Yeah.
common at USC or did you have to go through like a special program for it?
No, so it's actually part of USC's requirements to
That's
place
cool.
two implants and restore them. Yeah. So it was great. And then my clinical director, like my faculty director, she was the head of our grad prosthodontics program. So she let me do like a supervised overdenture type of case as well, starting from someone who had a denture already, but needed to get like, osteotomy. So I got to like oversee the like oral surgery part of that, which is so great. And then do like the implant part of it. She ended up having like some soft tissue issues. So being able to like see her through the perio part of it, I mean, which was great, right? It's almost, I don't like when things go wrong. I like predictability. But it was good in dental school. Like if something didn't necessarily go great, then you were there and you could ask questions. I'm like, okay, like what do I do? Because when you're in the real world, that's like you're expected to know that. It's like then now people are asking me, well, what do we do? I'm like, oh my gosh. Sometimes like I'm like, I don't know. let's learn together. But so I was happy for almost like mistakes in dental school because then it's like
Yes.
you learn how to correct them as well. But yeah.
Yeah, I totally feel the same as you. Like if there's a time and place to have something crazy happen or for things to not be working, it's in dental school while you have that supervision and guidance available. Like it's almost better when things don't go well because then you're a little bit more prepared for when you graduate to problem solve.
Yes. 100% agree. Well, definitely. It sucks in the moment.
Yeah.
But when you get out, when you get out and you can troubleshoot because you're like, I've done this before.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So to transition the conversation a little bit closer to where you
Mhm.
are now, can you talk about when you graduated? Obviously, you mentioned it was 2020, so it was a little unique circumstances, but can you talk
Yeah.
about your job search process? And you mentioned like the temporary license, Arizona, now to Florida. Like, what was the process like for your associate roles from then to now?
So, um, obviously 2020 happened. I was living in LA. March. I actually, there was yeah, I lived in Florida during the like like the first initial pandemic few months. So, but in May I moved to Arizona, and I actually worked as a dentist at the practice that I was front office with before school. So I was able to kind of like work with my mentor, and we did everything there, like implants, root canals, dentures, crowns, like CEREC crowns, everything. So that was such an awesome experience. But ultimately I kind of decided that, because of the role that I was in previously, I didn't feel like I was necessarily getting the respect that I deserved as a dentist. So in order to kind of separate myself from that, I left the practice and I worked at another office kind of temporarily. And then I just decided that I wanted to be closer to my parents. The reason why I wanted to move to Arizona was to kind of work with my mentor. So when that didn't really work out, I started to make steps towards, coming to Florida, moving to Florida. So yeah, then, I mean, for the temporary licensure for Arizona, it was basically everything except for clinical boards. I took ADEX. So it was everything except for like the ADEX exam. And once that was offered at USC, like in July, I think it was, then I was able to, submit my scores and let them know. But I actually failed my clinical boards the first time, which was like super devastating. But I was able to take it again and pass. So that was all good. But luckily I had my temporary license and I was able to work. So again, just really blessed to be able to do that, because a lot of my classmates didn't live in states that offered that. Because I think it was only Colorado and Arizona at the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know the boards with the typing out like mannequin boards, everyone has different opinions about it, but I know that it's still really common for people to not pass, even though it's like supposed to be more standardized, but I think it's still challenging in its own way.
Yes. And I was shocked. I was like, well, that would be a lie if I said I was not shocked. Cause obviously like clinical things is like what I had like prided myself on. So I was like, okay, like I got it. So to not pass, again, like very humbling experiences that happened. But I try not to like take it personally. I was just like, okay, like I didn't fail for like a crazy reason. I failed for being too conservative. So I was like, if that's the reason why I failed, like, I guess I'm okay with that. I'll retake it and do more. But, we were the first people to ever work on like the typodonts for like the class 2 and class 3s. Cause they weren't supposed to be released until 2021, like for people who were graduating this year or 2020 last year. So that was interesting to be kind of like guinea pigs for that. And it was, I like it better. And actually just today, Florida came out and said that they are no longer requiring live patient boards. So anyone who wants to get a license in Florida, you don't have to take it on live people, which, just hearing I just don't think that's like right in general, but hearing people's experience of like being like exploited by patients and like demanding thousands of dollars, it's just is like crazy. I mean, dentists are the only people that have to like prove everything on a real patient before they can get licensed, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's definitely an ethical question for sure. So I think it's moving in a good direction with the mannequin boards, and hopefully they can continue to improve it so that it's more clear, the expectations for the students. I think that's the problem a lot of the times is like students aren't totally clear on what they are wanting them to do with whatever type of prep or restoration they need to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. It's just going to get better, which is exciting.
For actually like finding the offices you were going to work at, getting the job offer, did you look on like Indeed, LinkedIn, like your state dental association, word of mouth? Like what did you do to try to find the positions?
So my first job was obviously like I had already worked there.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really have to do anything special for that one. For the job I got afterwards in Arizona, there's a dental staffing website in Arizona called Princess. So I had used that, and that is good for like if you want to like temporary, if you want to just like pick up a couple shifts, if you want to find a job, like full-time position, permanent positions. So if anyone is moving to like the Phoenix area, I would highly recommend like the Princess Dental Staffing website. That was something that was really great. And a lot of them are also like temporary to permanent. So you can try out offices, see how they're ran, and then see if you want to work there full time, which is incredible. I feel like moving to Florida, I expected that because that was my only experience, right? Was like, oh, I can just work temporarily places and see how I like them. And it was very much a shock when that was just not the case in Florida. So Florida was a little bit more difficult to find a job. I actually moved here in August, and I didn't really settle on something until November. And I had used Indeed, I think, for that. Um, so
Gotcha. Yeah.
yeah. So if you don't find a job like right away,
Mm-hmm.
don't get discouraged. I feel like you need to be really picky about where you work and where you invest like your time and your energy in. That was my goal after
Yeah.
I had kind of worked at those other places in Arizona, was like, I really want to be picky because you spend a lot of time and you need like a good, like, I feel like everyone needs a good mentor, like someone that they can kind of like rely on to ask not only dental questions, but I mean, just like moving throughout life questions as well. So,
Mm-hmm. And I know the contracts, like if you're not careful, you can get locked into a long-term, pretty rough contract too. So you really want to like where you're working.
yeah, the second job I was at, I guess I didn't read it that well. I mean, I thought I had read it pretty well, but they like withheld $5,000 for 9 months. So I actually still haven't gotten that $5,000
Oh my gosh.
from them. I was supposed to get it in March. So I'm like going through that, which is crazy,
Mm-hmm.
but my gosh. Yeah, never. I would say like, if you're ever reviewing a contract, like have someone who is a dentist review it. Like if people want to send me their contracts, I will be happy to tell you what is normal, what is absolutely not normal. Having
Yeah.
been through 3 of them now. So
Yeah. So at your current office, for people interested, can you kind of walk through like a typical work day, like and what
yeah.
procedures you're doing, everything like that?
So where I work in Fort Lauderdale, we have a lot of people that kind of like work on yachts, and who are here like from like South Africa, Australia, like the UK. So I see a lot of new patients. I would say it's like 50-50. I'd say it's like 50% people who are here who are like, you know, they're they're just in the port and then like their tooth broke and they need to come and like get work done quick. So I do a lot of like CERACs, we do a lot of like emergency work. Um, but I'm lucky that my office lets me do root canals, like I said, CERAC crowns. There's like a national shortage on dental hygienists. So I do a lot of like cleanings and which I don't mind doing. But yeah, I mean, I'd say right now, while I'm kind of building up my patient base, it's a lot of like new patient exams, um, emergency work, crowns, fillings. Um, it's kind of cool. I get to do like an all-on-4 case soon, hopefully. The patient will accept, but so it's pretty much anything,
Yeah,
really.
that's nice.
Yeah,
And
it is.
how big is your office? Like how many dentists are working there?
It's just me and one other dentist.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
you their first associate or did they have someone before you?
No, they had someone before me. And what's kind of nice is like it's an all female office.
That is nice.
Yeah, and like there's no drama, which is amazing. It's so great. So for anyone who's out there who's like wondering if it's possible, it definitely is. um, but yeah, it's just us and it's great. It feels like a little family, which is nice.
That is really nice. And
Hmm.
one of my last questions that I wanted to talk about
Yeah.
is your work-life balance. So how do you spread your time throughout the week with clinical things for the practice, your personal life and hobbies and everything?
I so my second job out, I worked 5 days a week, like like Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. I was the only dentist. I was, like doing everything. And my owners, I worked for private practice, my owners weren't involved at all. It was super toxic. I just got really burnt out. So I feel like I get like emotionally invested into all my cases, like into all my patients. Um, and so I kind of realized that at least for right now, maybe like until I can build up um like an emotional callus, like I still always want to be like invested into my patients and treat them like they're my family. But sometimes I feel like I'm like too much into it. I just realized I think 4 days a week for me is good. And then, so when I came to Florida, as I was like getting my license transferred and studying, Florida's written exam is pretty actually hard. So while I was studying for that, I got a job at Orange Theory because I was paying for Orange Theory and I thought, well, I don't have a job. So if I work here, it'll give me something to do. I can meet people and, it'll take away a bill. But and actually the office that I work at now is like shares a wall with the same Orange Theory, which is so crazy. But so I ended up working at that Orange Theory. And then even after I got my dental job, I stayed on. So now 1 day a week, I like work front desk at Orange Theory, which I love. It's such like a nice break. I feel like it's so nice. And again, it still is like, I get to talk to people and I get to socialize, but I don't have like that pressure. Like, like there's not a lot of, it's not all on me, there. I have a manager, I have a boss there. So it's nice to be able to have like a little mental break and do that.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah. And I try to set boundaries. I think that was like my biggest thing was
yeah,
like setting boundaries is like, I'm always available for emergencies, but within like after 5 p.m. like I'm out. I'm out. Like if it can wait, if it's not an emergency, I would just, I would appreciate being like not contacted until the next day at work, which isn't like
mm-hmm.
against anyone. It just is like I get so like worked up about things, whether like good or bad, whatever. That if I can't fix it or if I feel like my day is like dragging on, it just gets to be a lot. So I think like setting healthy boundaries, like making sure that you're taking time for yourself. Even if like I still truly don't have like a day off during the week, but it still feels nice to like kind of get away, like I said. So definitely set some boundaries for yourself because it's really easy to not and to get kind of caught up in everything.
That's good advice. That's definitely something I am trying to do, like even as a dental student, so that hopefully I can carry like good habits into work eventually.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's so smart. I was not that person in dental school. I was like, 7 days a week, grinding all the time.
Yeah.
And it just carried over until like my work life. And I just realized it's just not sustainable for me. I think maybe other people are just different. But I just know for me personally, I thrive on like setting boundaries now.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think I'm like a bad person, and I don't think I'm like a bad dentist for doing that, which it took a while. I felt really guilty. But I just don't know, because I just, now I'm like more calm at work,
Yes.
because I'm like, I've had time to like digress.
Yes. I think it possibly even makes you a better dentist because you're more excited, alert, happy to be there. You bring a better energy because you're not burnt out. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, thank you. I'll keep that in mind. It's not just me.
Yeah, definitely not. We were talking about dental school and like kind of trying to make the most of your experience. And I know there's
Mm-hmm.
so many resources out there nowadays that dentists and students can learn from. Do you have anything that you recommend to students?
Um, like to students as far as like while I'm in dental school, like while I was in dental school.
Yeah, or anything. I mean, if you like something that you use now, whether it's like a podcast or groups or pages that you follow, anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, I try to follow like informational groups on Instagram. Um, and I I don't know. I feel like I'm not like a great person for this. I think eventually when I start doing like more CE courses,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm looking into like the KOI ones, like the
Yeah.
KOIS, like those ones look great. So I think once I like start doing those more, but I feel like I'm a really bad person for this, because I literally set those like boundaries so hard because I got so burnt out,
Yeah, that work is
that
work
I
now.
need to come back from it now. It's like, okay, like
Mm-hmm.
too much break from dentistry.
No,
Um,
I get that.
but yeah, I think just following informational accounts, but like I am never afraid. Like if I have a question, I will always look up on like the NIH. Like I always am like reading articles about like, okay, like what does research say about this? Like I think I utilize that, like those things more than anything. I mean like daily.
Yeah.
Um, I'm reading research articles.
Yeah. I mean, it's
So
good to have those direct sources that are vetted and accurate.
yeah. And especially like I think when you start to get out into working, you're like, oh my gosh, like what's the success rate of this versus this? Like is there a big difference? Like, am I wasting time, money? Like, what am I doing? So I think just like doing your research about it can actually help you be like a better clinician as well, because if you're looking up success rates of different procedures, it can just help save the time of like those post-op appointments, those reevaluation, those emergency visits of, like something happening, which are inevitable, like whether you do everything correctly or not, like it's going to happen. But I think just being like armed with knowledge is so useful. And having all of that education at your fingertips is great.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And do you have any, we kind of already talked about lots of advice for students, but do you have any final advice for people listening that you want to end with?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I didn't have like a very traditional experience. Even like in dental school, I felt like, again, like clinically, everything was great, like now, like looking back, but just like overall, just like don't give up. Um, and don't compare yourself to other people, which is so hard to do, but you just can't. I mean, yeah, I think that's like my biggest advice. That's what I wish someone would have told me, is that, you know, don't give up. If you're a pre-dent and you're applying to dental school and you haven't gotten in, don't give up. Like do your research about like what schools match like the scores that you have, and apply to those and reach out to them, let them know, hey, I'm interested. I called USC 2 weeks before they called me. And I said, when's your orientation start? And they're like, you didn't get an email? And I was like, well, no, I haven't been accepted, but I'm going to call them that day and ask if anyone didn't show up, because then I'll show up. And then they called me 2 weeks later. They're like, yeah, we want you to come. So I think like not giving up, not letting the people get you down, keep trying, is the best. And have fun. I mean, like, this is like a once in a lifetime opportunity. You have the rest of your life to work. Try to like enjoy yourself a little bit, like take time for you as well. So yeah, that's my advice.
It was really good advice. So thank you.
You're welcome.
What is
Anytime.
the best way for people to contact you if they have questions, like your Instagram, or is there something else?
Yeah, so people can always reach out to me on Instagram. My handle is doctor spelled out, period, and then Brie with 2 I's, so BRII. And I think that is the best way. And if there's anything, that maybe requires a little bit more explanation, I don't mind, like giving my email out at that time. But I think just messaging me on there, which I've already had people do, which is great. And I hope that they would say that I reply right away. But yeah, I mean, I was an ambassador at USC, so I feel like I'm used to, and I enjoy helping people, and helping them make a decision, even if it's, telling them things that I didn't love about USC. I think it's a huge investment, time and money. So I'm always very honest. Again, I loved my experience at USC, but it just may not be for everyone. So I don't mind helping people out with that.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'll make sure that you're tagged in the Instagram post the day this goes up, and I'll have your Instagram handle linked in the episode notes and everything. So people should be able to find you if they want to ask questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. No problem. It was my quote unquote day off.